When you finally walked away, they thought it was funny. They assumed you'd crawl back within a week, begging to be let back into their toxic little ecosystem. But what they never accounted for in their smug little calculations was the aftermath of your absence. You didn't just leave, you took everything with you, the energy, the spark, the foundation they were standing on. It all went with you. Now they're stumbling through empty rooms, watching their world collapse, wondering why nothing feels stable anymore. Let me paint the scene they'll never admit to seeing. When you turned your back and walked away, it wasn't just an exit. It was detonation. You'd been holding the pin on a grenade for years, and when you finally dropped it, the explosion wasn't instant. It unfolded slowly, beautifully, and devastatingly as they watched their entire illusion unravel thread by thread. Because they never realized, not until it was far too late, that you weren't just part of their story, you were the story. They treated you like furniture, something to lean on when convenient, something to ignore when uninteresting, something to kick when frustrated. But furniture doesn't have a heartbeat. It doesn't remember. It doesn't keep receipts. You did. You kept every single one categorized in your mind and spirit, waiting for the right moment to cash them all in at once. And when that moment came, when you finally said those two legendary words, by law, the entire economy of their ego went bankrupt. Their confidence, their control, their illusion of superiority, gone. What they never understood was that some people aren't just players in the game. Some people are the game itself. When those people leave, they don't just remove their pieces from the board. They take the board, the rules, and even the concept of winning. What's left is nothing but lost players staring into empty space, realizing their moves no longer matter. When you left, you didn't just walk away. You dismantled an entire ecosystem. You erased the blueprint that held their identity together. It was the architecture of absence, a void so precise and intentional it made black holes look clumsy. You didn't just subtract yourself from their equation, you deleted the entire formula. And now, they're left trying to solve for X when X was you. Every single thing they took for granted, their confidence, their balance, their social standing, was built on your presence, your consistency, your light. They got so comfortable standing on your shoulders that they forgot what it felt like to stand on their own 2 feet. Now they're free falling through a reality that used to make sense, realizing you weren't holding them back, you were holding them up. That's the difference between flying and crashing, and you can feel it in the silence that followed your exit, the quiet meetings, the dead group chats, the shift from electricity to static. Because you weren't just adding to the vibe, you were the current that made it all alive. You were the power source they all plugged into while pretending to be self-sufficient little solar panels. But solar panels don't work in darkness. And that's exactly what you left behind. A darkness so thick they can't even see each other anymore. Just shadows bumping into shadows, wondering where all the light went. Now they're scrambling, desperate to replace you, bringing in new people, new energy, new dynamics. But it's like trying to replace the sun with a flashlight. Sure, there's a flicker of light, but it doesn't warm anything. It doesn't grow anything. It doesn't create life. It only reminds them what true illumination felt like when you were there, turning their mediocrity into something that almost looked like excellence from a distance. And distance is all they have now, an infinite, unbearable gap between what was and what will never be again. Because when you left, you didn't just walk out. You took everything that held their false empire together. It wasn't just your body or your effort. It was the entire invisible infrastructure you'd been maintaining while they were busy playing their petty power games. You took the emotional labor, the intellectual property, the creative current, the spiritual frequency that kept their operation breathing. They never noticed how much you carried until the lights went out and suddenly no one knew where the switch was. You were the translator, the one who made dysfunction appear functional, who turned chaos into coherence. You made their cruelty look like tough love. Their neglect seemed like independence. Their abuse masquerade as strength. But when you left, you took the dictionary with you, and now they're speaking in tongues, babbling confusion, because without you to decode their damage, they're just noise pollution with legs. The cracks started showing fast. Connections broke. The relationships you secretly maintained for them fell apart. The bridges you rebuilt every time they burned one down are gone for good. Their reputation, the one you guarded with your presence, collapsed because people only tolerated them to stay connected to you. Now they're standing in an empty room, realizing it was never filled with friends, just spectators who came for the show you were producing. They look back on their achievements, their accomplishments, their so-called highlights, and finally see your fingerprints all over them. Every victory they boasted about carried your DNA. Every success story they told had you edited out of the credits. But you can't erase the foundation and expect the building to stand. You can't Photoshop out the skeleton and pretend it still walks. You can't delete oxygen and act like you're still breathing. That's what they're doing now, suffocating on their own revision of history. Because what they never understood is that while they were busy playing checkers, you were playing chess. And even beyond that, they were playing a game while you were building an empire. And when you finally walked away, it wasn't surrender, it was strategy. You didn't forfeit, you ascended. You didn't just walk away, you took the entire casino with you because the house only wins when the house exists. And you were the house. You were the walls, the ceiling, the foundation, and everything in between. They laughed when you said you were done, didn't they? That smug little chuckle dripping with arrogance. You'll be back. You always come back. But this time was different. This time you'd already designed your escape route while they were still planning their next move in a game that was already over. They were strategizing inside a cage you'd already set on fire. While they obsessed over winning battles, you had already won the war by refusing to fight it anymore. The scoreboard doesn't matter when there's no arena. The rules don't matter when there's no referee. The players don't matter when there's no game. And that's exactly what you took with you. The entire construct that gave their actions meaning, context, and purpose. Now they're just pantomiming purpose, shadowboxing with ghosts, playing cards with phantoms, running races with no finish line because you were all those things and more. Watch them now. Watch them try to restart the game without you, shuffling pieces around like something's happening. Watch them celebrate fake wins, hand out hollow crowns, pretending the illusion still works. It's all theater now, a world of make-believe where grown bodies act like children still waiting for the curtain to rise. But the stage collapsed the moment you stepped off it. They just can't admit the show's over, because right now, while you're living your life in peace, they're in emergency meetings about your absence, desperate strategy sessions about how to fill the void, crisis management teams trying to stop the bleeding. But what you left behind wasn't a paper cut, it was a full-scale hemorrhage. And you can't patch a severed artery with PR statements and denial. Everything is falling apart. The projects that used to thrive are crumbling. The plans that once seemed airtight are unraveling. The momentum gone. Because you weren't just a participant, you were the catalyst. You were the enzyme that turned stagnation into synergy. Without you, they're just raw materials, disconnected, unreactive, and unimpressive. They only looked brilliant when you arranged them into something that made sense. They're realizing now, far too late, that you weren't an accessory. You were load-bearing. Removing you wasn't like redecorating a room. It was like pulling out the main support beam, and now the ceiling's cracking, the walls are bending, the foundation's shifting. They're scrambling to patch it up, but you can't fix structural collapse with emotional duct tape. You can't repair a fractured core with surface-level fixes. Every day without you is another degree of decline, another percentage of deterioration, another reminder of how much they depended on what they never respected. And even if they finally understood it now, it wouldn't matter because you can't apologize to absence. You can't make peace with silence. You can't negotiate with someone who's already gone and meant it when they said that final word, that one syllable that sounded like laughter but hit like thunder. Bye. Let's talk about the economics of what really happened when you walked away. You didn't just leave, you triggered the biggest market crash of their lives. You collapsed an entire economy that ran on one currency: your energy. They'd been spending it recklessly like spoiled trust fund babies who never understood that wealth can run out. They never realized your energy was the gold standard backing their entire existence. You were the one paying for their confidence with your encouragement, financing their success with your support, and funding their image with your presence. And because they were overdrawing on your emotional account every day, they never learned how to generate anything of real value themselves. Now the bill has come due, and their account is empty. Overdraft notices everywhere. The bankruptcy isn't just financial, it's spiritual, emotional, existential. They're waking up to the horrifying truth that everything they thought they owned was actually leased from you. Their personality was borrowed. Their strength was subsidized. Their creativity was commissioned. And now that you've closed the bank, they're left with nothing but debt and dust. Watch them now, scrambling to rebuild their portfolio without you, trying to invest in new relationships with nothing to offer, trying to leverage assets that never actually belonged to them. But you can't mortgage an ego that's already in foreclosure. You can't refinance a personality that was never truly yours. You can't file for bankruptcy on a debt that extends into the very architecture of your soul. They owe you everything, and yet they'll get nothing. And here's the part that stings the most. You're not even watching. You're not tracking their downfall through mutual friends. You're not checking their socials for updates. You've moved so far beyond the wreckage that their collapse doesn't even register as background noise. Your world is too full, too alive, too rich in new color to waste time glancing in the rearview mirror. That's what keeps them up at 3 a.m. Not the guilt, not the regret, but the cold, suffocating realization that you're not thinking about them at all. Your revenge wasn't calculated or cruel. It was cosmic. It wasn't planned or plotted. It was physics. The universe simply rebalanced itself the moment you removed your energy from their system. You didn't curse them, you just left. And gravity did the rest. You see, when something has no foundation, it collapses on its own. Now they keep checking, hoping to see you struggling without them, searching for some sign that you're suffering, that you miss them, that they mattered enough to haunt you. But all they see is you glowing, thriving, blooming in ways they never allowed you to before. And that's the most brutal part. You're not trying to hurt them with your happiness. You're not trying to punish them with your peace or destroy them with your success. You're just living, purely, freely, unapologetically living. And that's the cruelty they can't escape, that your best revenge is simply existing beautifully without them. Every day you spend not thinking about them is another day they spend thinking about nothing else but you, haunted, tormented by the ghost of what could have been if they had just treated you right, if they had just recognized what they had before it was gone. But they didn't. They chose arrogance over awareness, manipulation over maturity, ego over empathy. And now, every blessing you receive is a reminder of what they threw away, what they can never reclaim, because you don't give second chances to people who wasted the first 1,000. And the cruelest irony of all, they know this. That's why they can't sleep. That's why the silence feels so loud, because deep down they understand. No one destroyed them but themselves. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton wrote it about physics, but you lived it through experience. They pushed you for years, poked at your boundaries, chipped away at your patience, and fed on your silence. They kept pressing, convinced you'd never push back, never leave, never stop showing up to save them from the chaos they created. What they didn't understand was that every shove they gave you was building pressure behind the dam of your restraint. And when you finally walked away, you didn't just leave. You exploded forward with the full force of all those years of suppressed energy. That release didn't destroy you. It launched you. You were propelled by pure momentum, the kind that comes from exhaustion transformed into power, pain converted into propulsion. And while that same momentum carried you straight into a better, freer life, it left them trapped in the void you used to fill. A vacuum that devours everything they try to replace you with. Now they're rewriting history, aren't they? Rehearsing their victim monologue, trying to convince themselves and anyone gullible enough to listen that you were the problem. You were too much, they say. Too emotional, too unpredictable, too demanding. They throw these labels around like shields, hoping the noise will drown out the truth echoing in their own minds. That you were never the problem. You were the glue, the solution, the stability that held their dysfunction together long enough for them to pretend it wasn't there. And now that you're gone, all the problems you used to quietly manage are surfacing one by one, like bodies rising in a drained lake. Ugly truths that can't stay hidden anymore. They're watching the water recede, exposing the things they buried, their insecurity, their manipulation, their weakness, all the things you absorbed, softened, and covered with love. Your absence has become their presence. The void you left has grown louder than any argument, heavier than any silence. It's everywhere. It's in the conversations that trail off. It's in the laughter that doesn't quite land. It's in the way the room feels colder, emptier, less alive. The space where you used to be now takes up more emotional real estate than your body ever did. When you were there, they could take you for granted. But now that you're gone, they can't take anything for granted. Not comfort, not joy, not peace. All they have left is the echo of your energy, the memory of your presence, and the unbearable awareness of how much nothing weighs when it replaces everything. That paradox, that endless loop of loss, is what's driving them slowly, beautifully, inevitably insane. Now let's talk about the building you took when you left, because it wasn't symbolic. It was literal in the metaphysical sense. You didn't just exit their life. You dismantled the architecture of their entire world. The structure they mistook for strength was really scaffolding made of your patience. You were the beams, the walls, the foundation, the roof, the invisible engineering that held their chaos upright. Their sense of stability wasn't built from their own resilience. It was built from yours. When you removed yourself, you didn't just leave a U-shaped hole. You revealed that the structure never existed at all. It was cardboard dressed as concrete. And when you stopped pretending it was real, it folded under its own falseness. Every floor of that building was something you provided. The foundation was your consistency, the part of you that always showed up no matter how drained you were. The frame was your strength, the quiet kind that absorbed storms without asking for applause. The walls were your boundaries, the lines they kept testing, crossing and breaking, yet secretly relied on for a sense of direction. When you walked away, you didn't swing a wrecking ball. You simply stepped back, and reality collapsed under its own weight because illusion can't survive without someone willing to believe in it. And you stopped believing. You stopped investing in the lie that they were capable of holding their own structure. Now they're trying to rebuild. Oh, they're scrambling, patching holes with new faces, painting over cracks with new relationships, recruiting new energy like desperate landlords trying to fill empty units. But here's the thing. You can't rebuild something that never existed. You can't renovate a mirage. You can't repair what was never real. All they're doing is hammering drywall into smoke and wondering why it won't hold. They're discovering piece by piece that everything they thought was solid was actually just your willingness to keep pretending. You were the one maintaining the illusion, feeding it oxygen, holding it up with invisible strength, and now that willingness, that grace, is gone. And with it, everything else has vanished. The address they used to give people to find them no longer exists. The coordinates now lead to an empty lot. The map says there's a building there, but there's nothing but dust and silence. Because that something they once showed off, The image, the confidence, the presence was you. You were the illusion of substance in their hollow world, and now, without you, they're standing in the wreckage wondering how they missed it. How they failed to notice that the foundation had no permit, no plan, no structure, that it was all you. You were the architecture, the engineer, and the electricity keeping their false empire alive. But your willpower, your brilliance, your soul, it's elsewhere now. You're not patching illusions anymore. You're constructing truth. You're building real